Hello friends, welcome to the California garden in the month of April. We'll look at our patio makeover, spring harvest and a lot more in today's episode. We will first take a garden tour, we will look at the harvest that we made this month, we'll look at what's growing in the California garden this month, we'll have some things for you to do in your garden, and finally we take a look at some spring and summer shopping tips for you. So in March and April we did a complete backyard makeover. As you can see here we have this new patio with some pavers. This is the Venetian paraquet pattern pavers along with the stackstone and the coping stone that you see here. The stackstone is the amber gold ledger, and the tree area, the avocado and the basil tree have a good solid base now, and it looks a lot better than it was. Back to the stack wall. The coping stone or the top of the wall is a limestone, and once again back to the area, these are two columns that we built again with the stack stone and the limestone as the coping stone. You have a lot of options when it comes to coping stones. We went with limestone. And finally, this is the growing area, and you can see a difference here. We no longer have the space between the last bed and the others. We actually added one more raised bed at the end to get a little more growing area. And finally, we extended our patio so that we can grow some plants in containers here in this area. So the garden is a lot more organized now. The container growing space is different. The raised beds have their own place, and we got an extra 32 square feet of growing area by adding those two raised beds. So this is how it looks like from the top. That is the patio area, and then there's a growing area that's right adjacent to that. As you can see here, all the raised beds are in the growing area, and the place that I'm standing at is where the fruit trees are growing. That's where I'm shooting this video from. And you can see here the complete look of the garden. We even improved the fence. It's a new fence with some good quality stain. And here is the area where the fruit trees are growing. As you can see again, it looks a lot cleaner now. We cleaned up everything. The fence is new. And I also put some landscape lighting, as you can see here. So overall, a lot of changes in the patio, landscaping, the stack wall, the fence, as well as the area around the trees, as you can see here. So a lot of work, a lot of changes that we did to our garden this month. We started in March, so it's been a couple of months. And this is how the garden looks like at night. This is around 10 p.m. and the landscape lights look pretty nice at this time. Let's look at the individual beds. We have some cabbages growing here. We just harvested this one cabbage and there's one left, after which I'll plant more onions here. Followed by some peppers. This is a Jupiter pepper variety and I'm trying it out for the first time. Followed by some onions. You've been watching the progress of growing these onions for a while now, and they've been doing pretty well. And finally I can see that the bulbs have started becoming larger now, so hopefully they'll be ready for harvest soon. Followed by some tomatoes. We are planting a lot of tomato varieties this year. San Marzano, Big Boy, Cherry, Beefsteak. So I'm excited to see how these tomato plants grow. The next bed has some okra seeds that we just sowed, and they're sprouted and you can see the seedlings. This is the Nombo giant variety of okra, something that I really liked growing last year. And this is the patio area where I have my containers, and you can see some plants growing in these containers. We have the pineapple, strawberry, a tomato plant, and then the mulberry tree, followed by some mint and lemongrass. And on the sides I have a curry leaf tree growing on each side. And let's move on to the next section of the raised beds. We have some more tomato plants. I planted 2 in this corner of this raised bed, followed by a lot more cabbages that have been growing for a while, and some garlic, and then some pepper plants. Now I tried different pepper varieties this year, so I'm excited to see how these turn out. We have multiple pepper varieties. We have the purple pepper, the mammoth jalapeno, and the Mexi bell pepper. So a lot of different pepper varieties, and I'm hoping to see different pepper varieties in our garden this season. Followed by some onions. And finally, the eggplants bed, which has a lot of eggplants. And these have been overwintered from last year, and they have been growing pretty well. And they're producing a lot of flowers now, so hoping for a good eggplant harvest as well. So that concludes the tour of the vegetable garden. So how did you like our backyard makeover? Drop in a comment and let us know. And now let's move on to the harvest section. We begin by harvesting cabbage. As you already know, we grew a lot of 45-day cabbages, and they have been producing very good cabbage heads. And we harvested a lot of these 45-day cabbages in April. We did harvest some in March, and then we continue to harvest these cabbages in April. Beautiful looking cabbages. The 45-day cabbages are great tasting cabbages, and they take very less time to grow. So that's the best part about these cabbages. And we also had the round Dutch cabbage, the other cabbage varieties that we grew in our raised beds. And as you might have known from my previous month's videos, we were growing a lot of cabbages in our garden. So the cabbages ended up giving us a very good harvest, and there are still a few cabbages which are growing in our raised beds. So overall, we were very happy with the way our cabbage harvest went. Moving on to the white icicle radish, we were growing this in a small container, and here you can see we're harvesting these. Excellent radish variety to grow, and it will give you very good tasting radish that you can harvest very quickly. And now let's look at what's growing in the California garden. We have the mulberry tree. We started growing this tree from just a small cutting a couple years ago, and it has produced some really nice plant and now producing a lot of berries as well. So I'm really excited to see how this mulberry turns out. It looks very nice for now. And then we have the flame seedless grapes that we grew. I have a detailed video on how this grape plant grows, and the grape plant is growing very well and producing some grapes now. And we have the Rajapuri dwarf banana plant at the corner of the garden, and it's producing flowers, fruit, and it looks very pretty and a great variety to grow. We also have a lot of tomato plants. Now you saw that we transplanted most of these in the raised beds, and then this is how they look like even in a small container. So at this stage, you should not wait any longer. You should start transplanting them in either your raised beds or in the ground. Now let's look at the things to do in your garden this month. If you're not composting yet, please do start doing that. Your garden is a rich source of nutrients. The dried leaves that you get from the trees make an excellent addition to the compost bin. And what I usually do is lay out a tarp like you see here, and then collect all the dried leaves, and it becomes easy for me to toss them into the compost bin. Now, if you want to break down your compost further, you can run your lawnmower over it. It will break it down into finer particles so that they compost quicker. But in either case, any kind of organic material like leaves, grass clippings will turn into compost eventually. So make sure you collect everything that you can from your garden. This is an indispensable source of nutrients for your plants, and it's cheap and almost free. All you need to do is just collect them and then put them in your raised beds or your compost bins. Cleaning our drip emitters is something we usually don't like to do, but this is a good time, the spring season, that you can clean your drip emitters. I'm cleaning my micro sprayers here. So the first step is to collect all your drip emitters and micro sprayers in an aluminum tray like you see here. This will give you a lot of room to work with and clean your emitters. And the first thing we do is we wash our emitters thoroughly, and by washing it in this running hose, you can remove most of the dirt and grime that's there on these emitters, and this prepares them for our next step of cleaning, which is to add some vinegar. Now the reason we use vinegar, it dissolves most of the lime deposits that's there on these emitters, and it's a great cleaner overall. And once you add the vinegar and water, it should dissolve most of the dirt and grime and lime, and then finally leave it for about an hour or so. Let it soak in the solution, and when you're draining the solution, just drain it away from your plants. You need to clean them very thoroughly with a cloth. I use this lint-free cloth to clean the emitters, and it does a great job. And you'll have shiny new like emitters for your drip irrigation lines. And it's a good time to start planting your summer vegetables if you haven't already started planting them. Summer vegetables include peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, okra, and a lot more. So here we are planting our peppers. We are planting 5 pepper plants in this 4 foot by 4 foot raised bed. And it looks pretty well spaced out and will give the plants enough space to grow. And we are trying out different pepper varieties this season. We have the purple bell pepper, we have the mammoth jalapeno, we have the red chili, we have the Mexi bell pepper. So a lot of different pepper varieties that we are trying out, and we'll see how these harvests look like soon. And once these plants grow, it takes about 3 to 4 months for these plants to grow to full maturity. So we will see how these plants grow and how the harvests look like from these plants. Now the next thing that I did in my garden was to move the raised beds. In order to accommodate the new raised beds, I had to move the existing raised beds a little further than they were. And this was a lot of hard work. What I had to do was remove the sides of the raised bed, and you can really see the amount of wear that the elements have on these raised beds. It's been about 5 years or so, I think, since I installed these raised beds, and the cedar wood has turned into a silver color, and it has faded and it has a little bit of damage on some sides. But then what I've done is I've moved the raised beds. I also need to move the dirt around. So after moving the raised bed, I had to move the dirt to the other side. And it was a lot of work, but it gave me a lot of space so that I could add my new raised bed, which I will shortly show you how I did that. And once I moved the raised bed, I also planted the tomatoes. So we are planting about 5 tomato plants in this 4 foot by 4 foot raised bed, and we're trying out different tomato varieties this year, and we'll see how it goes. Now there's a lot of organic matter in this raised bed, and tomatoes do need a lot of organic matter, and try to plant them as deep as you can, as you see here, and it'll give you the best tomatoes that you'll ever grow. And let's look at how we prepare the raised beds as well. The key to growing good plants is to have a raised bed that contains a lot of organic matter. So as you can see here, we've added a lot of dry leaves, some unfinished compost as well, and this forms a great base for your raised bed. Other than that, we can also add some potting soil that you can see here. So it's more like adding layers. You add some potting soil and then you add some compost, and then you can add more potting soil if you want. And as you can see here, what we are doing now is we are adding this compost. This is our homemade compost. It's not finished yet, but it doesn't really matter because it will eventually be broken down by the soil microorganisms. And as you can see here, we can add more soil in top of it, and that will give you a good raised bed mix. So this is one of the ways to make a raised bed mix. You can fill in anything that you really want, but this should help you out a little bit. And finally, we are adding our new raised beds. We got our same raised beds from the same company, which is Green's Fence, and they make excellent raised beds. And you can see the quality of these new raised beds. The new cedar wood looks so new, so shiny and nice, and eventually it does wear out over a period of time, and it is expected to. So after about 5 years or so, you can expect to buy new raised beds or replace your existing raised beds with the new ones. In my case, I was just adding 2 more raised beds, 4 foot by 4 foot. So this is what I got, and then I installed the raised beds. I also secured the drip irrigation line to the sides of the bed, as you can see here, and that's kept things in place. And once the raised beds were in place, we got about 32 square foot more of growing area. As you can see here, we planted some more tomato plants in this corner raised bed. We redid the drip irrigation, the micro sprayers, because we changed the structure of the bed. But overall, this was a great project. I'm very happy with the results. We ended up adding more space to our garden, more growing space, which always helps. We modified our planter areas. We had 2 planter areas that went from looking like this to this and finally like this. So let's quickly see how we did that. We first laid out some all-purpose gravel and then spread it out on these planters. And then the next step was to add the pebbles. We used the small Caribbean beach pebbles, the white ones. And as you can see here, all we had to do was just lay the pebbles on top and then spread them across so that they are distributed evenly around the planter. And what you get then is a beautiful planter. You can see that we already did our drip irrigation lines and the lights, the landscape lights. And all we had to do was really put the pebbles, and you get a beautiful planter that looks like this. We also got a new fence installed on all sides, and this is the back fence, the one that's across the fruit trees. And as you can see here, it was very damaged and the wood had started rotting and it was falling apart. So it was time to change the fence. And once the fence was changed, it looks like this. A brand new fence and a brand new stain. We used the Thompson's Signature Series stain, which is only available at Lowe's, by the way. And it's a great quality stain. We really loved it. And after looking at everything else, this was the best option that we thought would go well along with the colors that we wanted. So all in all, as you can see here, the fence looks great. It resists water and should last hopefully for a long time. And here are some garden shopping tips. We were at Costco and saw this beautiful water fountain. We didn't pick it up, but it's a beautiful one. And then you have the burpee seeds. These are organic, non-GMO seeds for a very decent price for 6 packets. There were some lavender plants which were in containers. It looked a little pricey, but great looking plants. And finally we had citrus. We had so many varieties of citrus at Costco. It was just amazing to see how many varieties they have. And for the price, it's really unbelievable. These 5-gallon pots, the citrus varieties that are here, like we have the Bear's Lime, we have the variegated pink lemon, a lot of varieties. This is the Lisbon, and I highly recommend that you just look at the differences before you buy. This is a beautiful Buddha's hand non-GMO citron, and more Eureka lemon, more varieties of orange. This is the Washington Navel orange, which I highly recommend. Then more Bear's Lime, Clementine Mandarin. All in all, I saw a lot of different varieties of citrus that were available in our local Costco. and it's a paradise for buying citrus plants. And we also had some good deals on potting mixes as usual. So if you're looking for some potting mix, do check out your local Costco. If you have a local Walmart, do check it out. There are some excellent garden supplies in Walmart this season. We found some coconut coir and earthworm castings, both at a great price. So if you're looking for some earthworm castings or coco coir, do check out your local Walmart. So there we have it, folks. That was our episode on the California garden in the month of April. Do let me know how did you like our new patio makeover. If you have any tips or suggestions, please drop them in the comment box below. And we'll see you again soon. Happy gardening.